Wonderful. Let's start with the webinar today. Just give me a quick moment for me to do a quick check with all of you. Good afternoon, everyone. All of you are able to see me. All of you are able to view my screen, and you're also able to hear me loud and clear. A quick yes on the chat box, everyone. Wonderful. That's great. That's wonderful. Great. Wonderful. Great. So yes, that is all that is needed to begin with the learning and begin with this webinar. Very interesting topic today. One of my favorites, something that I keep encountering with a lot of HR professionals who keep asking me, how would HRBP and analytics work together, or how would HR and analytics work together, right? So HRBP and analytics is something that we are going to talk about. But before that, I thank you all for taking out time to be part of this learning session. I hope to add value in next 1 hour, and hopefully I would be able to justify the time and the effort and the investment that you do in terms of this, right? So let's start by first quickly talking about CHRMP. CHRMP stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional. CHRMP is a premier HR certification, something which is globally recognized. It is a competency-based certification, a huge differentiator from any other certification. We are talking about 5,600 test centers in about 190 countries, our certification partner being Pearson VUE, and we are talking about more than 10,000 strong alumni base. And when I talk about myself, my name is Animesh. I come with about 17 years of work experience in field of human resource management. I head the training and certification vertical for CHRMP in India, Asia Pacific, and AU. I have, in course of my work, I have worked with various organizations, number of Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, and helping them set their HR processes, their HR departments, their systems, HR analytics setups, etc. So I would not only be sharing that what I know as a certification body and as a consulting firm. We have done enough good amount of work and exposed to various industries. So I would be bringing an element of what we have understood, and otherwise what are the best practices when we talk about human resource management, especially the HRBP and analytics put together. Wonderful. As we start, I think the topic of the day is HRBP and HR analytics, and what kind of business impact are they creating. It's huge, because if you look at a lot of times, a lot of HRs have this perception that, analytics is part of HR. It is HR analytics. However, it is different from what I am doing, or what my work involves. Or when you talk about, let's say, specialist function like L&D or talent development or anything, right? So there is always this perception is that there is something that is happening in HR, and that is something that is for those folks, just like how I am managing recruitment, and recruitment is for me. HR analytics is for someone else, right? Or HRBP is for somebody else. So today we would have a very, very complete picture drawn, so that we are able to make better career choices and better career decisions as we move ahead. I promise you that by end of this webinar, you would be in a better position to make career decisions in human resource management, and you would know how exactly to shape up your career in times to come, because you would have this understanding of what HRBP and analytics is. And not only that, you would also have understanding of how they are a wonderful combination together. So this is something that I assure you of. In return, I want your time. I need you to give complete attention to what is being taught. The whole session is loaded with information. Each slides have tons of information. If you go about missing one, connecting it to the other one might be a little difficult. So please be with me, bear with me, and also be around, so that we are able to then really add value in terms of the reason that all of you are here, right? Also stay with me till the end, because I have a beautiful, wonderful surprise for you for this webinar. And Now, let's quickly begin by talking about some myths about HR analytics and HRBP, right? Now, when we talk about myths, I think one thing that I normally hear a lot of people talking is that normal HR doesn't need much of maths, whereas analytics needs a lot of mathematics, right? So let me break that across to you. I think it's normal HR also does need numbers. It's not that you don't need deal with numbers. Performance management deals with numbers, isn't it? Compensation benefit deals with numbers. In fact, if you look at training and development in terms of training effectiveness, ROI calculation, a lot of things deal with numbers, right? Employee relation deals with numbers because we are talking about surveys and happiness indexes and NPS scores and whatnot, right? Yes, analytics deals with little more numbers, but we have to understand the nature of numbers, because the moment you feel that there is something analytical, something aptitudinal coming across, we worry a lot as HR professionals, because a lot of times career choices that have been made for human resource is also because some of us were not very good with mathematics as a subject. But remember, we are not talking about high-end differentiation, integration, calculus, sine theta, cosec theta, sec theta. We are not talking about inventing, exploring, or solving some linear equation with 2 variables, 3 variables, 4 variables, etc. So whatever we are talking about, whether it's HRBP or HR analytics, we are talking about simple maths. We are talking about simple high school mathematics, that which is important, and that is something that becomes very, very important, right? Another thing that we need to check upon in terms of myth is that you need programming and a lot of technology in terms of being good with HRBP and HR analytics. So let me again break this myth for you that technology is welcome. I think technology makes our life easier. Think of HR professionals who are working, who did not have Excel to work upon, right? You cannot imagine. I'm sure that at that point of time, working on Excel would be as difficult as working on maybe Tableau or Power BI or R, etc. right now for you guys, right? But then technology has become simpler. Earlier, it was mastering a technology and they were testing you in terms of your understanding. For example, if you look at SAP, which largely is being used by or PeopleSoft or Oracle Forms, whatever, when we talk about softwares like these, they are not very, very user-friendly. However, if you pick up simple looking softwares or a lot of cloud-based software solutions in HR and HRIS that has come in, then you would realize that technology has been simplified for many and many people to go about using, right? So the future that lies ahead is not about being good at difficult softwares. It is about being quick at easy softwares, right? So first of all, none of it involves programming, nor HRBP, nor analytics. Some exposure to beautiful looking HRIS softwares, which can help you create wonderful stories using dashboards and data visualization is something that is needed, whether you are in HRBP or whether you are in analytics. And I think representation tools like Power BI, Tableau is good enough as of now. And what I foresee in terms of next 5 years at least is something which would be a turning point in your career, which would set a lot of standards for all of you is good enough. So yes, you don't need to know programming. Please understand this. And representation tools, statistical tools, or HRIS are not programming tools. We are not doing Java programming there. We are largely it's like a HR specific website where you're clicking and generating reports, etc. Right? But it is certainly not programming that we are talking about. And third thing, which is very, very important myth to burst, is that being an HR, and when you say being an HR, whether your designation says you are an HRBP or not, but a lot of times the way HRBP is structured in organization, you are being exposed to multiple things, right? So if you feel that this is not something which has a tangent or a touch or an overlap with analytics, then you would be hugely mistaken in times to come. Hugely mistaken in times to come, because data is certainly suggesting something else, right? Data is absolutely suggesting something else. 90% of the work that we are doing with organizations, and we are training for some of the best organizations in the world, including Fortune 10, Fortune 500. In fact, we have trained Fortune 1 as well, right? And we are currently training, upskilling HR folks from different departments on HRBP techniques and analytics to almost everyone, right? So basically, HRBP is restricted to a few departments, but when I say analytics, then we are training operation folks, we are training complement folks, we are training L&D folks, we are training talent acquisition folks, we are training almost everyone, right? So the way top-notch organizations are foreseeing the future, and especially post-COVID, when organizations are going at a different level digital, I think upskillment is the only choice HR professionals today are left with. You cannot be just doing what you're doing and expect to be on roles at the same time see career growth, and at the same time get a chance to work with best of organizations. That's not going to happen unless you have upskilled yourself really well. So it is relevant. Remember, analytics is going to be relevant to almost all roles. And that's why, this webinar, which is marrying HRBP and analytics, is so very important, because it gives you the complete entire picture of how HR is going to shape up in times to come, right? So this is another myth that needs to be busted, that it is not relevant to my current role, which is again very, very important. Now, before I get deeper into the topic, I think we need to look at HR in a completely different in a different light altogether, in a different perspective altogether. So we need to revisit how our understanding of human resource is in terms of how it has gone about evolving. Now, a lot of us, a lot of you hearing me, seeing me, I'm sure that you are HR professionals, or you are looking at getting into HR. And when you talk about evolution of human resource, what may come to you in mind is probably what you studied in college, or MBA or BBA or somewhere else, or the 10 mark, 20 mark university exam questions. No, we are not talking about having that visibility right now. We are largely talking about how organizations have gone about seeing human resource management. And we have to go about seeing how organizations have gone about structuring human resource department, and how evolution of human resource has been so far, and how the evolution of human resource will happen from ahead, because that's when we can have clarity in terms of how do we go about planning our respective careers in human resource management, isn't it, right? So three things. One is that how organizations see human resource as a department, very important perspective. Second is how HR perspectives, processes, systems have changed, and how HR has evolved so far, and where does the evolution go, and how do we fit ourselves better in that evolution, so that we work for not only best of organizations, best of designations, and also command good salaries otherwise, isn't it, right? That is what we all are aiming for. So when we talk about evolution of human resource, I think first thing that I pointed out was how organizations go about seeing it. And this is very, very important, because when we say organizations go about seeing it, we don't really think like this, isn't it? We largely think, okay, there is an HR department, and A and B and C and D, this is what it does, right? But we have to understand that organizations are not only seeing HR as a department. Organizations are seeing multiple departments. They have sales, and they have marketing, and they have operations, and then they have human resource, and then they have finance, and then they have accounts, and then they have facility management, and then they have administration, and they have number of setups, a number of departments. And the way they are keeping the visibility in is how they are aligned with the organization, or what the nature of the business of the organization is, or the nature of business of the setup is, right? The kind of work that is involved. So when we talk about the alignment, any department can be broken down into either being a core function or it being a support function. Now, what do we mean by core function? Core function largely means anything which is in line with the nature of business of organization, right? Now, for example, if we are talking about Standard Chartered, or we are talking about Citibank, or we are talking about Facebook, or we are talking about Oracle, or we are talking about Accenture, or we are talking about Lufthansa as an aviation company. Now, any department, any designation, any role that is in line with the nature of business of organization, which means either it is doing what the organization is meant to do or stands to do, or it is somewhere in line offering the services that the organization stands for, then these are largely core functions. For example, operations of any department, right, or any organization, right? Standard Chartered or Citibank, a loan officer, a banker, a cashier, what are they? They are in line with the nature of business of organization, that is banking, right? When you talk about ground staff and when you talk about cabin crew and when you talk about pilots for an aviation company, for an airline, they are something that is in line with the nature of business of organization. Or software engineers, software developers, software testers, these are largely in line with what Accenture has to offer or what Oracle has to offer, right? So anything which is in line with the nature of business of organization is a core function. So operations invariably is a core function, right? Always, in all organizations, in all setups, right? When we talk about sales or marketing, right? I think we always take sales and marketing together, but the new way of thinking is that sales is too short focused and marketing is long focused, because it involves branding and it involves a number of other elements which needs a focus which is longer, whereas sales is chasing monthly, quarterly targets, etc. So there should be different departments, which is very interesting. A lot of organizations have restructured themselves in that way, because this is so true for a lot of organizations, isn't it? But then what are they selling? What are they marketing? What are they promoting? What are they advertising? What are they branding upon, right? So they are largely selling, their advertising what the organization stands for, isn't it, right? So they are also core functions. So when we talk about sales, when we talk about marketing, when we talk about operations, these are all in its evolution, in its structure, in its alignment, core functions to an organization. And when we talk about support functions, when you look at finance or when you look at accounts, then for Infosys or for TCS or for Accenture or for Oracle or for Lufthansa or for SpiceJet or for any other aviation company or for a hospital or even for a bank, finance and accounts largely is about budgeting, managing the vendors and how exactly they have gone about, allocating budgets, etc. That is not the nature of business of Oracle, isn't it? Or of Facebook, because Facebook is not a finance and accounts company and Oracle is not a finance and accounts company. Or if you talk about Lufthansa, it's not a finance and accounts company, but they are important departments, right? So it's something which is not in line with the nature of business of organization, but something which is critical because they are playing a very important support role, like finance or accounts. Are support functions in an organization, right? Similarly, when we talk about human resource, right? When we talk about human resource management, HR is a support function in all its ways and means, in the way it is structured, right? Now, certainly Facebook is not a HR company, right? Or if you look at Oracle is not a HR firm, right? They're not HR firms, right? But HR is a very, very important part. Why is it an important part? Because the entire employee life cycle support system is dependent on human resource management, right? So whether it's about people coming in, which is talent acquisition, or whether it's learning and development, or whether it's performance management, or whether it's compensation, benefit, payroll, or whether it's personal management, or whether it's employee relations, or whether it's people moving out, giving an exit interview. This entire setup, this entire employee life cycle from in to out, from entry to exit, is supported by HR as a function, and that makes HR a very, very important support function, right? Because you are supporting not a process, not a system, not a compliance necessarily. You are supporting humans, right? So the best understanding that we can have, and it's important to have this understanding, right? Because when we talk about planning careers, we have to have this entire visibility of where do we fit in the organization perspective. So we are a support function, right? A human resource is a support function, and in all its ways and means, we are going about supporting employee life cycle and supporting an organization, right? So this is how human resource has evolved. And if you look at the journey of human resource and where it is going ahead, this is also very interesting because I think look at what has happened over a period of time. Over a period of time, I think people were needed to manage mass employment started with industrial revolution, right? And when we talk about mass employment starting with your industrial revolution, we are talking about for the first time when organizations went about employing, other than army, employing so many people. And we talk about this whole idea of democracy also coming in. So voting class was born, and there were leaders who wanted their votes, and then they talked about welfare of employees, and they talked about labor laws, etc. So initially there was no HR; it was largely welfare officer and labor manager, and for a large amount of time it was called personnel management. In fact, even universities today offer postgraduate courses in personal management, PM and IR, etc. Isn't it right? And then came in the idea of human resource management, because a lot of things then also worked across. They realized that humans are assets, and earlier assets were only buildings, but now humans were considered assets. The whole idea of teamwork evolved, the whole idea of driving performance evolved, skill evolved. All this came into picture, and that led to the whole idea of human resource management. But what we are seeing in last 10 to 15 years is the evolution of strategic HRM. And what I understand from a lot of HR professionals who are currently working in different setups, right, or who have studied a particular subjects in HR or otherwise, they're largely stuck in the outlook of what was 20 years back, right? So the whole idea of human resource management versus strategic HRM, that shift is taking place. But if we are not able to align ourselves and upskill ourselves in terms of moving from human resource to strategic HRM, a lot of people then feel stuck here, right? They feel stuck that their career is not growing. They feel stuck that they are not able to move forward, and that's largely because they do not understand what strategic HRM is bringing on plate. Largely, even if you look at HRs working in top-notch organizations, and when I am having a conversation with them, or there is career advices flowing around, they tell me that okay, I have been involved in improving productivity, I have been involved in reducing cost, and that's what they feel is the larger point of strategy, right? But strategic HRM is completely different, right? I understand that increasing productivity, solving, reducing costs are two very important aspects for anything, not necessarily HR, but for any aspect, and especially for HR, because we are a support function, and organization sees us as cost and overhead, because we are not really running or getting revenues, right? But then strategic HRM actually changes this whole perception of us necessarily being a support function, right? And us necessarily being a cost overhead, right? It says that strategic HRM is bringing elements which makes business feel that no, it's absolutely essential. It's absolutely essential to drive these practices, and this is what we would be exploring now. And one thing which has largely played a role in this is I would say three elements, right? First is practicing of competency-based HR, right? So when you talk about competency-based HR process and systems, I think to a great extent it has brought a lot of tangibility in terms of what we are delivering, what we are measuring, and how we are going about doing that, right? The second thing is the change in the department structures within the organization, which has played a very important role in terms of driving strategic HRM. And third is HR analytics, right? So first is competency-based HR practices, and this is huge because what competency-based HR brings in as practice is making HR process and system very meaningful, right? And HR runs on processes and systems. So for example, you run, how do you recruitment process? You have group discussion evaluation form, you have interview evaluation form, number of forms, isn't it, right? When you look at performance management filled with forms and systems and processes, right? You look at L&D, from a HR perspective, if you see, filled with all that data, whether it's training analysis or whether it's training effectiveness, right? So when you look at task-based HR, the way these forms are created are very, very different. And even when you look at skill-based HR, I mean, task is, I would say, historic, but where you were writing what needs to be done as part of the job, and all HR processes and systems were looking at measuring HR through that, right? Second was skill, right? Skill came in a little late, and if you look at skill made it possible for a lot of cross hirings, etc., to happen, right? I mean, otherwise, why would software companies go about hiring a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer? Because they go about testing people on skill, and if people fit into the skill, and skill being a developed ability, something that can be developed over a period of time. If they feel that somebody has logical ability and analytical ability and can fit into a role of software, which means the person can be trained. So they focused on that, right? Competency-based HR takes it much further. Competency-based HR doesn't worry about what has to be done or what skill is needed for people to go about doing something. It is creating parameters which largely is going about measuring things very, very visibly, and something which is focusing on successful outcomes of things, right? So the moment you go about writing or creating processes and systems based on competency, you create a standard of a successful outcome, and when you measure things against that, then it becomes a completely different ballgame, because you are absolutely able to improve whatever you are doing in human resource. For example, if an interview is happening and you have the interview evaluation form says communication skill, then largely as HR professionals, I think we would go about judging people on how they go about speaking English, right? And our understanding would largely be maybe different from each other. For example, if I rate somebody 4 out of 5, you may rate somebody 3 out of 5 or 4.5 out of 4 or 5 out of 5 as well, right? Which means if we have 60, 70 people in webinar today, we can have at least 30 or 40 different scores or different perceptions on how we go about judging the skill of communication, right? And even the questions that you would go about asking would largely be not something directly on communication, but you would make him speak and you would rate yourself in terms of how the person is speaking, right? However, communication doesn't necessarily mean good English. It may mean multiple things, and there may be certain things that needs to be achieved through communication, right? Now, if you are able to put that across as interview evaluation form, this would take interview to a completely different level. For example, one of the elements of communication can be giving difficult feedback, to be able to convey difficult messages and give difficult feedback with ease, right? Now, look at this, right? We are not talking about communication skill. We are talking about a very, very visible, very, very definite, very, very concrete, evidence-based aspect of communication, which is leading to a successful outcome. And what is that? Being able to give difficult feedback with ease. Now, if that is written in interview evaluation form, you would not judge people based on how they are speaking English, but you would want to dig deeper into, in the last role, how he has or she has been able to communicate with ease a difficult message, which means your questions would be, because now that's part of evaluation form, isn't it? So the only way you can rate it if you go about digging deeper into it, right? So this whole idea of behavioral event interviewing then comes into picture, and competency-based interview come into picture, where you are making it much more substantial, much more measurable, much more structured, right? So basically, I mean, this is one thing that has really changed HR and gave structure to it, and that is practicing competency-based HR processes. I mean, competency is much deeper, much bigger. We cover it as part of our CHRMP certification program, a lot of focus on competency, and it impacts everything. Remember, the way you would go about creating training need analysis setups, the way you would be going about creating performance management, in fact, even compensation to a great extent, talent acquisition, all of it will get impacted and be very different if they are put across under skill-based HR processes or under competency basis. So it's huge, but just to give you a very, very brief understanding of how tangible HR is becoming today, and what competency is bringing in. So one reason of this big change is following of competency-based HR process. The other reason for it, as I said, is how HR is structured within the organization. Right. And when we talk about how HR is structured within the organization, then there is a traditional setup, the normal human resource setup. And the other one is the strategic HR setup, which is the HRBP model. Right. So we should quickly understand how exactly they are set up so that we are then able to visualize the modern way of running HR in the best of organizations. Because if that is our visibility, then if you're working for best organizations, you know how do you exist here and how you can then rise up. And if you do not, or if you're not working with the best of organizations, then at least you know that this is what exists there so that you can try and get in there, isn't it? Right? So when we talk about traditional model, when we talk about HRBP model, traditional model is the regular, we have been born and brought up. Anybody who is aware of HR and have gone about interacting with HR professionals, largely people have been talking about concepts like, oh, become a HR generalist, become a this, become that. And these are all representations of a traditional model HR setup that we are talking about, right? So what happens in traditional model HR? There are largely 6 different verticals, right? You have recruitment and selection, and you have training and development, and you have compensation, benefit, payroll, and you have performance management, and you have employee relation, and what we call is administrative HR, or largely personal management of yesteryears that is all coming across. And these verticals are either specialist or they are generalist based on the size of the organization largely, or sometimes also the overview of the organization, right? For example, if you are talking about a 50, 100, 150 people company, then do you need 6 different HRs to do this? No, you don't need 6 different HRs to do it. You need maybe 1 or 2 HRs who can do multiple things, which means one HR can also do training and recruitment, another person can do compensation and administration, and third person can do performance and employee relation, or only 2 people can do, one can do recruitment and employee relation and administration, another person can do performance and training and compensation, depending how an organization goes about deciding, right? And if you talk about big organization, 10,000 people, 5,000 people, 1 lakh people organization, then depending on how they have geographically spread out, etc. But you would be specialist HRs, because now you would have a recruitment and selection department, and you have a training and development department which would take care of training, and then there would be compensation, benefit, payroll department which would take care of compensation, benefit, payroll. Largely, this is how we have gone about seeing this getting structured, and that is how HR has gone about delivering things. And there are clear things that business goes about telling us, that, okay, you have to recruit following people by following date. We want training in this, please give us training in this. We want this by this, so you go about it. So largely instructions have come to us from business, and our success and our strategy and our planning has largely been on how quickly, how swiftly, how soon we can solve or do the work that has been given to us by business. Now this is traditional HR, right? So largely this is what is happening. What is happening here? Business is clear with what they want from us. They are just giving what they want from us. We are executing. So we are largely executing, implementing, and that's our role. That's our focus. And in that, we are looking at cost saving, and we are also looking at higher productivity, and that is what we are chasing, and that is what is setting our KRA, KPI, KPIs. Largely, this is what is happening. Right now. There are advantages to it because it's cost effective. There is a clear hierarchy, very easy decision making, and also process oriented. So if HR is cost to company and it's an overhead, this model is working beautifully well because you're able to save cost. You are also able to go about executing things easily because there is absolute clarity in terms of how the department is structured and where the authority lies and what kind of decision is being made and how processes have to be planned and executed. So we have gone about mastering it. Actually, this is what we have done in the last 20-30 years as HR professionals. We have learned this art of execution and implementation. But then the disadvantages is that still makes us support only, right? And if tomorrow robots can do better job than us, then we are out. Because we are not strategic, we are not able to think, right? We are not really part of the business goal and business strategy and business structure and business planning and its implementation. We are largely part of what business wants from us and only executing that and strategizing for that and planning for that, right? So we are basically an implementer, right? And we are not results oriented in terms of business, in terms of directly being linked to the business, apart from making some cost savings for them or maybe some improvement in terms of productivity. Largely, that is what we have been doing, right? As part of traditional HR. Now, this is how traditional HR is set up. And the other model is the strategic HR model. Remember the journey that we saw of HR, the journey. Now we will talk about that strategic model, which is the HRBP model. But before that, let me quickly check with all of you. Everyone getting me? You're able to hear me? You're able to see me? You're able to see my screen? A quick yes on the chat box would really help. Great, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for the quick yeses. And then we talk about this beautiful model, the strategic model, which is called HRBP. Now, all of you who have been hearing HRBP, and maybe some of you who are working also as HRBPs, but why does your designation exist? How does it exist? And when we say HRBP, is it just a designation or it's an entire structure which can have a designation called HRBP, right? Let's understand all of that better. And where does analytics fit into all of this? Because we have somewhere, all this while I've just not mentioned analytics at all. So let's understand how that comes into and then what we are looking at driving across as well. So in HRBP, what happens is that you break the entire HR department into three key verticals, right? HR operations, COE, and HRBP. Right? This is what you do. Yeah. So you have HR operations, COE, and HRBP. Now with HR operations, what you do is something very interesting. Now, if you look at HR, HR has two kinds of processes. One is front-end, people-facing, people development roles. And the second one is process and data and largely execution bit, right? So when we talk about HR operations, anything to do with data, anything to do with file, anything to do largely with process, anything to do with back-end HR, right, comes under this vertical of HR operations, right? So for example, when we talk about record keeping, when we talk about timekeeping, when we talk about payroll, when we talk about vendor management, when we talk about background verification, when we talk about compliance implementation, when we talk about HR audits, when we talk about travel help desk, when we talk about visa processing, all of it, right, comes under one segment, and you call it HR shared services or HR operations, or some organizations call it HR administration. Now, what is good about this then? The good thing about bringing all of it here is that if it was part of different verticals as traditional HR, which means part of execution was happening under recruitment and part of it was happening under training, these were processes specific to them. But then how do you chase process excellence? How do you optimize systems and processes? If everything comes together, then there is a lot of interchange of ideas, best practices from one getting implemented somewhere else, and you have clear focus, right? You have very, very clear focus, and people who are leading and who are driving this, they would find it easy to drive it because of not being largely deviated with other things, but largely being able to focus on deliverables, focus on execution abilities, focus on optimization of processes and driving process excellence. So this is what happens. So if everything related with process comes on one go, then it really benefits the organization, because you are able to bring all of that. And that's why HR operation as one setup, largely almost 90% of processes are now part of entire HR now becomes part of this, and that is HR operations. Now, when we talk about COEs, which is Center of Excellence, then anything which is strategic, anything which is people developmental, anything which is getting people in dealing with people, or largely planning and strategy becomes part of COE, right? Which is critical, which is crucial. So Center of Excellence, COE, something that stands for, is representing that. So when we talk about talent development, when we talk about compensation benefit planning, when we talk about talent acquisition, and when we talk about HR analytics, all of it come under Center of Excellence, right? And look at the names also, guys, very important, because see, organizations were calling it training and development, but lately, if you have noticed, organizations are calling it learning and development. Or if they were calling it recruitment and selection, now you're largely seeing a lot of organizations calling it talent acquisition, right? And in fact, some of training and development is not being called learning and development also, it's being called talent development. Why? It is being called that because processes and systems have moved from skill-based or task-based HR to competency-based HR. What is the outcome of recruitment? The outcome of recruitment is hiring talent. And when you look at hiring talent, you do not only stop at when the vacancy gets closed. You look at talent being acquired by seeing the job success ratio of how many people hired and who, what was the performance levels, right? The focus is not on training, which is the act of delivery. The focus is on learning, whether people have learned or not, which means now driving ROIs and training effectiveness and implementation of learning all becomes very, very important, because the moment you change the name of the department, the focus also changes. Right, that is also become that is very, very important. So I mean, just a little offbeat, but just to give you a perspective of, think of it, it is so important. And that's why when initially I said that CHRMP is a competency based certification, it's a big differentiator. You have to understand that it is a big differentiator, because what you learn here is very different from what you would learn in some things that call it recruitment or generic terminologies like this, right? So the Center of Excellence largely is talking about these 4 elements. And these 4 elements are then driving deliverables which the business needs as per the requirement to best of the abilities. That is what is happening. So there are talent development or learning and development or training and development needs. And then there is compensation benefit planning, where you have to go about creating pay parity, and you have to go about creating a lot of other things, and you have to go about driving all these things. And then we are talking about talent acquisition, which is about hiring people who lead to job success. And then there is HR analytics, which is driving aspects of evidence-based HR and data-driven decision-making. Very, very important. And we would talk about this at length. But then all of it is something that is just part of COE. And then we have HRBP. Now, HRBP is the third vertical. Remember, there are 3 verticals in this strategic model. One is HR operations, the other one is COEs, and the third one is HRBP. Now, how is HRBP structured? Now, this is how HRBP is structured. HRBP comes right in between the management or the employees or the managers and the rest of the HR department. Right? What are the rest of the HR department? HR operations or shared services, talent development analytics, talent acquisition, and compensation benefit planning. Now, what is HRBP doing is that it is working very, very closely with the management setup to go about supporting employees in all their HR needs. Now, let me give you an example. So let's say I'm an HRBP and I am supporting a BU. BU means business unit of, let's say, 100 people. Right, in let's say software technology, right, of a company which is catering to US clients. Right, now look at how organization have first. Let's talk about organizational planning. So organization has gone about doing a planning. They have done a long-term, mid-term, short-term planning, and then these goals have been broken down. And organizational goals now has been divided into departmental goals. Departmental goals have been broken down into team goals. Team goals have been given to individuals for individual goals, etc. And all this exercise has been done. Now, I am supporting a team of, let's say, 100 people, and that's the business unit I'm supporting. And I'm, let's say, reporting to a line manager. So I go to the line manager and say that the goal setting exercise is over. Let's discuss our working together, right? So we go about discussing in terms of what his KRA, KPA, KPIs is. And then once we have that clarity of his KRA, KPA, KPIs, we talk about where they're leading and where they are lagging and etc. And go about getting deeper into this. And I go and tell him that, okay, where do you think you will lag in terms of achieving your KPI? What is your worry? And this guy who's supporting a US team says that, oh, I feel that I have a reason to worry because my folks who are reporting, especially this team X, they are not really good with writing emails, etc. And they're really working hard with the US clients, and US clients are raising this up again and again. And the CSAT score is certainly going to go down, which is my important KPI that I have to take care of. Not only that, I have to go about pitching additional products and services, generating some revenues also. If they're not happy with something as basic as communication, how can we expect something else happen, right? And then this is where, so I see that his KPI is not being met, right? And the reason is developmental. So I now go back to talent development, get the best folks there who are doing communication training, etc. I bring them on board. They may hire a vendor from outside, whatever it is. And then I go to the line manager. I bring everybody on the table. We do a training need analysis specific to that team. And then we design a customized program which is catering to the kind of email mistakes that these folks only are making. And then we deliver this program only for them. And we then track whether it has been successful or not. It is so different from traditional HR where we are rolling out some program and we are asking for nominations and people are nominating. Nobody has clarity in terms of it is just some developmental activity which is happening. But here developmental activity is focused towards solving a problem, which is not helping a team manager achieve the person's KPI. And if the KPI is not achieved, then if manager KPI is not achieved, then department KPI will not be achieved and organizational KPI will not be achieved. Right? So what are you doing? You are holding in hand. I mean, HR now becomes very, very strategic because you are holding, we are going hand in hand with the business in terms of achieving business goals. There is another guy, a sales guy. He says, oh, my folks are doing well, but then there is a reimbursement policy. You have to fill the form by 25th and 25th is month end and these guys are going crazy. They are losing money. It's demotivating. I'm not able to meet targets. I have had people complaining and leaving because of this reimbursement policy. What do? I go back to comp and ben planning and I go to HR operations, bring both the folks back in and create a specific only for that department policy, which is the flexible reimbursement policy. You're not having an organizational policy. Only for that department, a specific policy is created of flexible reimbursement and you go about catering to that, you take care of the dissatisfaction and it's taken care of. You are going hand in hand. Right? And now let's talk about where analytics comes into picture. And why HRBP and analytics is this deadly combination that organizations are longing for, right? Let me take another example, right? A line manager says, oh, I need more people, right? Now, earlier, if a line manager or a manager would say, give a requisition form, you would go about say, yeah, I'll find the people and you go to talent acquisition and you will say, okay, go about hiring this. But now you will not do that, right? What you would do is you would do a workload assessment of the team, because a lot of times why are managers making requests? Because understand, you go and talk to a manager or if you are a manager, I mean, a lot of times this is how the conversation is, right? I have 20 people reporting to me. I have 30 people reporting to me. I have a team of 5 that I'm handling. So basically the team size becomes the criteria of how great, how big or how the authority of the manager I am in, which means people love to handle big teams. But big teams may not be good for organizations, not only from cost perspective, but from culture perspective as well. There should be enough utilization and there should be work culture of delivery and people should have enough work and all that. These are very, very important aspects, right? So you need to create a fit team and not a fat team. So now what you do is that analytics and HRBP now will work together and do this whole small analytics project in terms of gauging workload levels of the team that they are supporting. And now they will tell them that, okay, you don't need more people or you don't need these many more people. You may need only these people, right? Very, very important. Cost saving for organization, creating better work culture, driving changes, solving business units, helping organizations achieve KPIs. All of it is going hand in hand. Let's go a little deeper into this and let's understand how exactly this is happening. So basically, when we talk about HR business partner, we are in between and we are driving what employee wants from business, but we are also telling what business wants from employees, and we are completely balancing this across, and we are taking all the necessary steps that humans need as part of their journey in an organization and equip them with so that they can go about meeting the deliverables and also remove process deficiency, which is very, very important, right? So that is what HRBP is doing. What is HR analytics doing? HR analytics is largely driving an approach where you will not take decision based on gut, right? But you will drive evidence-based HR practices or data-driven HR practices, which means any decision which involves, let's say, more spend, or any decision which involves any data, or any decision which involves a problem, or there are existing problems in the business that needs to be solved, right? And if you have to go about solving those problems, then what is the approach that needs to be taken and what would be the right solution? What does the data suggest towards the right solution is what HR analytics is doing. That is what HR analytics is doing largely, right? It is taking up business problems, it is taking up improvement areas, and if decisions have to be made by businesses, it is giving you inputs in terms of making the right decision. And I'll give you a few examples to that. But largely, if you talk about what are the kind of decisions that we are talking about, which HRBP and analytics will accomplish together. Look at this, right? They have to make better hiring decisions by predicting candidate success, prevent talent from quitting their job by predicting employee turnover, test with employee policies which are effective and which are not, which means if you have gone about creating, implementing policy, or there are existing policies which are effective, which are not, test which employees policies are effective, which are not, identify and quantify work accident risk, analyze future workforce need, improve and optimize employee experience, very, very important. And I'll give you some real life examples as well. Develop better talent development strategies, improve and optimize employee experience, calculate ROI on talent development initiatives, very, very interesting, tackling talent scarcity, and also process improvement. Not only that, focus on employee productivity, optimize organization structure, improve company profitability per employee. This is what you are looking, you are directly in line with profitability. Think of it. Link better compensation and rewards. You should be able to design that better, and you should be able to drive HR actions to business outcomes, right? Basically, what you want is that people investments should be able to drive business objectives, and nothing is more working closer together, because talent development is only focusing on L&D, right? HR operations is mainly focusing on HR. Compensation planning is mainly focusing on compensation, and talent acquisition is largely doing talent acquisition. But what is HRBP doing? HRBP is taking care of all employee issues, and to be able to make better decisions, the closest that you need to work on with to solve a business problem is analytics. Right? So when HRBP and analytics are coming together, they are coming together at a different level, because you are going hand in hand, right? You are wanting data-based decision making. And as I said, that there have been cases where 20% headcounts have been reduced by analytics done by HRBPs, right? Through workload analysis practices. That has been possible because you have been able to achieve that, right? Let me give you another example. One of the points that we picked up was stop critical resources from leaving. Now, this is what one organization did, right? Looking at the body language of people working, which was being captured by video cameras, right? And desktop mounted and laptop mounted cameras, they were able to predict a 100-day, 90 to 100-day critical resource leaving period, which means if people were working and they were looking distressed and they were looking unwilling to work and their facial expression were not very happy or not very conducive, depending on that, they were able to gauge that this critical resource would go about leaving, and they were able to give this critical information and this action alert to the respective manager, who was then able to take necessary action, or from your end you were able to take necessary action in terms of so that critical resource don't leave. Now you were able to predict who is going to leave. How? Because you brought HRBP and analytics practices together, right? Which is very, very interesting, right? Look at another case that I would discuss now, right? A very, very interesting case of what would happen. Maybe in another 2 minutes I'll start discussing, but this is what is the benefit of HRBP with analytics. You are becoming more predictive rather than reactive. So you're not waiting for things to happen and to react to that, but because you are able to predict better, you are able to solve things better. That is something that you are able to do it. You are able to make more informed decisions. You are making sure decisions are based on fact rather than gut feeling of managers, right? That is very, very important, right? For example, one of the sessions I started and I said, whom would you hire? And this was for a consultative role, consultative selling role, and I was training the sales folks. So there was consultative training. There were HR folks who were involved there. So this was basically HR folks who were getting trained. But I asked them that, okay, there is your organization is into consultative consulting and solutioning. So whom would you hire, extroverts or introverts, and in a sales role? And everybody said 9 out of 10 people said that it would be extroverts, right? And then we looked at the data of talent acquisition of extroverts versus introverts who were hired and what were the performing levels. And we realized that 57% people were below par performance, 24% were average performance, and about 16-17% people were only top performance, which means the success rate was only 17%. And when we compared with the introverts, the data was different. Now, which means listening was a very important skill, and understanding was a very important skill. So basically, I mean, gut feeling is good, but gut feeling needs to be backed with data, and data should drive decisions. That is a big benefit that we go about taking, right? Helping HR make informed recommendations to the business, which is very, very important. And then we have helping to form business case for certain initiatives and be more informed about setting up of KPIs. All this is something that we are talking about in terms of HRBP working with analytics and solving. In fact, that's what I said. HRBP is the closest that work with analytics. So for HRBPs having analytical skills and for analytics having HRBP skills, or otherwise people who are looking at getting into HR and having a good career where you are able to move up to the CHRO level. I mean, C position is new to HR. Earlier it would stop at VP HR, Director HR. Largely, this is the combination that's going to work really, really well. And a lot of people are transitioning out of that other roles and looking at these roles because this is what it holds, right? Now, let's take another case discussion where they came together and they were able to solve the problem, right? There was a ABC corporation which had very high absenteeism rate. Absenteeism rate was about 7.2% compared to acceptable limit of 2.5 to 3.5%. And we are talking about calculating absenteeism, which is very, very important. So it was total absent days divided by total number of work days worked by workforce into 100, which technically means that, let's say if there are 10 people in a company and everyone took 1 day leave, so 1 into 1 day leave, 10 people. So it was about 10 total absent days divided by total number of work days worked by workforce. So let's say it's a 2-day week off a company. So it's working about 22 days a month. So 10 into 22, 220. So 10 divided by 220 into 100. I mean, this is not how you arrived at 7.2. I'm sure 7.2 was arrived at a different calculation, but I'm just telling you how the formula works, right? So the absenteeism rate was 7.2% and acceptable limit was 2.5 to 3.5%. So you go about now calculating absenteeism rates, and you would have done it for not only overall, you would have done it to managers, departments, etc. You would have done it, and then you would have seen leave data, and then you would have seen collected other data and employee survey data, and you would have done a lot of analytics and work together, and then you would have zeroed down on the reasons for absenteeism. Now, reasons for absenteeism was 40%, 21%, 20%, 14%, and 5%. 40% as personal illness, 21% as family issues, 20% as personal needs, 14% as entitlement mentality, and 5% as stress. So this 100% was broken down into these things. And now with working together as HRBP and analytics, we were able to zero down on these elements. And the moment you were able to zero down on these elements, you knew what corrective actions could have been taken and what is causing these, right? So I'm sure that if you only break down personal illness, you would see various reasons, right? That can have its own pie chart of 100%, and family issues can have its own pie chart of 100%, and 20%, which is personal needs, that can have its own pie chart of 100% of why people are taking leave. I mean, that is what you have gone about doing. And then you came up with solutions. For example, what this organization did was that there were existing budgets for personal illness and other things, but anything which was in line with absenteeism, and these were the reasons of absenteeism, and their initiatives were in line with the reasons, they started putting in more money there, which means more budgets were allotted. For example, if doctor on campus was 1 day a month, now it is 1 day a week, right? That is something that you started doing. Anything which was already an initiative but was not being well utilized and was in line with this was given more prominence. The second thing that they did was they thought of new employee engagement initiative, policies, etc., that were taken in line with nature of absenteeism. For example, family issues can be, they would have seen, this is something that I know of, so I'm just suggesting this. that women between 28 to 35 were taking more leaves because of child care issues, and they tied up with the daycare, which was very close to the office, so that these issues can be minimized. So and also personal illness, they went about coming up with immunity builder weeks and immunity builder months just before the season changes in a year, and they propagated it through mails and photographs, etc. They came up with desktop yoga, they came up with various things which reduced absenteeism largely, right? Not only that, they came up with policy changes. So when they did this whole analysis, they realized that entitlement mentality, which is 14% the reason for absenteeism, is causing huge productivity loss and also money loss, right? So there was sick leave and casual leave and privilege leave and earned leave, etc. They made all leaves earned leave, which means if you don't take the leave, you get money. Right. So entitlement mentality was largely because that, whether I'm sick or I'm not sick, I'll still take the leave. Why will I take the leave? Because I'm entitled for sick leaves, right? So that attitude went off because they moved all of that. And they were finally able to reduce the absenteeism from 7.2% to 3.8%, which is huge success. You have actually solved a problem, right? You have actually gone about solving a organizational problem, which is wonderful, isn't it? Right. So look at this, how this whole thing is shaped up, right? How when we talk about this entire understanding that we have looked at creating today, we are talking about these elements, right? We are talking about myths that had to be busted. We are talking about evolution of HR and understanding how HR is aligned with business, which is the best understanding of HR we can create. We talked about task-based, skill-based, competency-based HR, and also journey of HR and strategic HR. And then we talked about what creates strategic HR, where we talked about competency-based HR is the first element. Second is how exactly you structure your department. And we understood structuring of department of the old method and the new method, and what new method brings in, and how it gets aligned with organizational goals, and then how it drives organizational goals. And to drive organizational goals and to solve business problems, basically driving organizational goals is solving business problems. Now, when it comes to solving business problems, do you solve business problem based on gut, or you solve business problem based on data? Right? So analytics comes into picture, because to solve business problems, you will be able to solve business problems in a better way if you make database decisions and based on evidence-based HR practices, right? And this is what we have understood today in a wonderful manner in terms of how HRBP and analytics coming together are so strategic to an organization. And this is what also brings me to this very interesting thing, right? 7 out of 10 jobs, guys, 7 out of 10 jobs would need, in HR, would need analytics. And a large part of this would be HRBP and HR Analytics, which would be the best combination ever, right? And also 68% of COEs, HR MNCs will have a dedicated analytics COE. That is also true, right? So if you look at what's moving ahead in the world today, is not a transactional role of HR, not execution role of HR. A large part of it would be automated. For example, 5 out of 10 job roles in talent acquisition or recruitment and selection would be automated. Chatbots, AI, artificial intelligence, etc., would take over. Resume make searchers, and there are so many softwares already. It just not become enough very, very popular. It would certainly take over, right? 5 out of 10 jobs would be lost. But when we talk about so what kind of roles would be the most niche roles in human resource? So the most niche roles in human resource would be roles which are linked in terms of consulting and providing solutions, right? So the only way to stand out, or a big reason to stand out in human resource management, would be to make use of what's the opportunity in this crisis situation, right? So currently, I think the world is in crisis, right? We are talking about pandemic, but what is also happening right now, guys, is very interesting, is that the outlook of organizations are changing, right? Even the bosses who were so particular about people walking in exactly at 9 or 9:30 a.m. in the office are now okay with people working from, because there is no other way. And they are looking at now opening up to the possibility of how that can be made more productive, right? Organizations have completely gone digital. So many organizations have gone about declaring work from home for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 1 year, etc. And I mean, not only this, to a great extent, this is happening. And HR is a function which is not necessarily, you need to be in a factory, even if it's a manufacturing unit, right? So how do we then better ourselves, right? And how do we then see an opportunity in this crisis? And how do we then become a HR which becomes invaluable to the organization, right? Or to the industry, for example, not to one organization, but to entire industry, right? And the way to do it is to stand out. And the way to stand is to invest in your self growth, your upskillment, right? You should aim at mastering the next gen skill, because if you do not have the next gen skills, the world is changing. And if it was changing at a speed of 4 before COVID, I think now it's changing at a speed of 8, right? Because organizations are transforming themselves in terms of hierarchy, in terms of data, in terms of business continuity, in terms of policies, in terms of structures, number of things, right? That is something that is happening. So you have to go about mastering the next gen skill, which is very, 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 very important. And the best jobs would be, as I said, would be into solutioning and consulting roles within the organization. And the HR role, which would be into solutioning and consulting, are largely HRBP and HR Analytics. Largely, they would be the roles in solutioning and consulting. And if you have been able to do this, which means you have been able to invest in yourself, if you have been able to master the next gen skills, and if you have been able to get into solutioning and consulting role, then you are invaluable. And if you are invaluable, then the growth, I mean, this is just like how software industry was 20 years back, folks. Right? 20 years back, what was happening? Right? 20 years back was few software engineers and many jobs, and people who started then are all CTOs and CEOs, etc. The same way, people who master these skills now, in another 5, 10, 15 years, they would be the CHROs and they would be the VPHRs and Director HRs, because they would clearly have the skills and competencies aligned with what the future needs, right? And that brings me to this very, very important offering that I have for all of you, which is CHRMP's dual certification, guys. Dual certification, right? Which means HRBP certification along with analytics certification. And I have a beautiful surprise also for you that we talk about. And if you look at what this certification has to offer, if I just quickly run you through the course curriculum. If you look at the course curriculum, we are talking about CHRMP Advanced. If you look at this course curriculum, we are talking about 10 modules, there are, you can see all this that we are talking about. We are talking about 10 modules on job analysis, on competency mapping, very, very interesting, on talent acquisition, also behavioral event interviewing, also managing and appraising performance the new age way, learning and development, and also employee engagement, and also compensation benefit planning, one of my very interesting topics, and also India payroll. We are talking about HR policies, and we are talking about HR operations. So these all modules that are coming to you is giving you an idea of entire HR structure focused on HRBP. So we are, for example, behavioral event interviewing. We are not teaching you how to ask, tell me about yourself, why should we hire you, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, etc., etc., etc. What are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? No. If you have to judge somebody's interpersonal skills, what questions to ask? If you have to judge somebody's creativity, innovation, what questions to ask? Very, very specific, right? It's like a beautiful module. Competency mapping, as I said, I talked about competency, but that how exactly competency framework is done, how mapping is done, how that whole structure is created, all that is something that you are going about learning there, right? How compensation benefit planning in terms of this whole structuring is done in terms of internal equity, external equity, individual equity, creating pay grades, pay slabs, pay parity, all that is something that is taught, right? In HR operations, you learn how offer letters, appointment letters, how vendor agreements, and where are the confusions, where are the irritations, where are the negotiations, all that is something that you go about learning. Performance management, how KRA, KPIs are set, how continuous feedback is changing a lot of things, how to create competency-based performance management form. Very, very interesting, right? That is something that you go about learning, right? So all of it is something that you go about learning in here. And when you talk about HR analytics as a syllabus, then we are talking about 12 weekend program, where sessions happen, which where we teach you introduction to analytics. We teach you models. Models are very, very interesting. There is this whole idea of maturity model where descriptive, diagnostic, prescriptive, predictive analysis is taught. Then you have capability review model. Then you have SAP model. Then you have Deloitte model. Then you have Gartner model. All that is something that is taught. Then you are talking about talent acquisition analytics and workload analysis, where you learn this whole idea of efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. And in workload analysis, remember I was telling all of you that whether you want a fit team or a fat team, so how that whole analysis of workload is done in terms of utilization time, realization time, staggered shift approach, all that is something that is taught to you in this module. And in fact, one has a case study of Google, another has another case study, which has this whole 20% reduction you are actually able to do as part of a case study, and that's the actual case study from airport authority, that you are able to reduce that. That is very, very interesting. And then you are learn lead lag, and you learn cascading, and you learn BSC, and you learn pest analysis. And then in talent development analytics, we expose you to a tool, Kirkpatrick L3 tool called results lab. So you get exposed to that software. Apart from that, you learn RTCA, you learn triangulation, very, very important aspects. ROI calculation, beautiful calculation that you learn, cost impact of training and how exactly that is done. Then one of the key problems that analytics is aiming at solving is problem of succession planning, potential performance matrix. We'll make you learn how to create employee engagement analytics, attrition rate, absenteeism rate, cost of the attrition and absenteeism, ELTVs, employee life cycle mapping, compensation analytics. Competency gets mapped with JDs, and then how this gets populated as compensation parameters. It's something that is taught. New entry to it's a new entrant to analytics. 3-4 months back we were not teaching this, but we are constantly updating our content. Data and metrics, very, very interesting session. NPS formula calculation, revenue per employee, time to productivity, all this, some ROI calculations, about like 50-60 metrics. You not only learn how to create these metrics, you learn formulas, how to also create new metrics. For example, metrics for performance, metrics for employee happiness. Like, these are not something that you will find on Google, right? But how, depending on what your organization structure is, how do you go about creating that is something that is taught to you. And then you learn this beautiful tool called Tableau. You learn dashboarding, you learn storytelling through this, and that is something that is taught to you in this as well. It's very, very interesting. And let me now help you with this wonderful surprise that we are talking about. Give me a moment. Just 1 second. And here we go. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. Yeah, so now that I talked about so much and you guys have waited for this wonderful surprise. So this is what comes in. We are talking about, so yes, we have alumni. You get once you're done with the program, you get validated. You have a certification, you get a digital badge, you get a certificate of achievement. Look at what our alumni have to talk about us in terms of people who have been working in best of organizations, best of designations, and what they have learned. You have a wonderful certification on your way. But the key here is this very, very interesting offer. This is a Black Friday offer. This is applicable for this month. We have a HR Analytics batch starting on 5th of December. We have a HRBP Advanced starting tomorrow, which is 25th of November. Now, remember, some people prefer taking these certifications together because HRBP Advanced, the expert-led session happens on Saturday, and Analytics, the expert-led session happens on Sunday. Some people want to do it over 6 months. So they first finish HR Analytics, or they take up HRBP Advanced, and then they go about doing the other certification, right? So when we talk about this dual certification, the wonderful surprise that I have for all of you, and this is like very, very rare, I would say once in a lifetime opportunity for all of you, is that if you go to CHRMP.com, and I'll probably just go to that website and I'll show it to you, right? You will see a USD 610 price for the certification in HR Analytics, or in INR, it would be 42,834. For HRBP certification, you would see USD 384 or INR 24,780. This is something that you would see as part of the pricing, but as part of the Black Friday offer that we are talking about, you are not paying for the HRBP certification at all. So basically, if you look at the actual price of both these certifications, we are talking about an investment of 67,614 in INR and about close to USD 994, close to $1,000 in USD. But what you are paying is only for the HR Analytics certification, and you are getting, we are waiving off the entire fee for the HRBP certification. So you are only paying 42,834 or USD 610, and you can do it in 3 months, or you can do it in 6 months. That's a choice that you can do, but you'd be saving 384 USD or 24,780 in INR. And not only this, the surprise also is that you don't have to pay this money in one go. You can go about making this payment in 3 zero-cost EMIs, which basically means that to register, to start your journey, right, what you have to pay is USD 203 or 14,278 in INR, and after 1 month you have to pay again USD 203 or INR 14,278, and again after 1 month, right, you have to pay USD 203 or INR 14,278. This is something that is once in a lifetime offer for all of you. This kind of fee waiver is only possible in this part of the time of the year. And what you also get is CPD membership for 6 months. This is a wonderful membership. In fact, it is one of the most sought after membership for HR professionals. I'll show you how exactly it looks. If I have to probably show you, I'll quickly go to CHRMP.com and just give me a second. I need to quickly switch on give me a second. Can you see my screen now? Yeah. So if you look here, we are talking about going to www.chrmp.com, and if you go here, and also I'll just show you the academy that we were talking about, right? So if we go to academy, you will get a login ID password, which would immediately start working, and you would get into this zone where there is so much of HR information that you would be able to do that. So every Saturday and Sunday, there will be sessions on your HRBP or analytics, which would be for about 3 to 4 hours. But you would get membership for CPD. Look at CPD membership. It is like encyclopedia of human resource. So anything that you need to know, we have more than 250 hours of expert from different parts of the world, different parts of the industry, teaching you what's changing in human resource, what the latest in human resource, whether it's digital HR, whether it's employee experience, whether it's reward and recognition, whether it's learning and development, whether it's employee engagement, whether it's policies, operations, analysis, downloading templates that you want to download and you want to create and make your life easy, or we are talking about niche concepts like competency mapping or instructional design. Everything that you talk about in human resource, OD, all of it is part of this CPD resource hub, right? So you can be part of the CPD resource hub. We would keep doing events from, you would be able to access your certification course also from here. You would be able to register for the live sessions that happen on Saturday and Sunday also from here. All this is something that you would be given to you. So close to 400 lessons in here, and you would have 1 year access to this. So you can go about learning at your own pace. You can write yours. We will have support from time to time. You would get connected to other members. That is something that you can also do. You can join various forums that are there. So all this is something that you can do. You can go about connecting with different members from different parts of the globe. That is something that you can go about doing. You would be able to, as I said, attend various events. So all of it is something that you would be able to do. And this is, when I say it is once in a lifetime offer, then look at this. We are talking about HR analytics, and just if you go to CHRMP.com, you go to future ready programs, you type in HR analytics, you would be able to see the pricing. You would be able to see the course curriculum that I taught, I discussed. You would be able to look at alumni testimonials. And if you come here, you'd be able to also look at the price. But what is key here is that you would be able to only pay for HR analytics, right? Which means you're paying here, and that too, not in one, not in two, but three equal EMIs without anything paying extra. And what you're getting is this HRBP certification without paying anything extra, right? Without paying anything extra. So make use of this. I think this is purely for webinar attendees, and you can look at taking this up, right? Any questions, any doubts? Anyone would like to ask anything that you would like to know? Please feel free to ask your questions, your doubts. You can either type in your doubts or questions in the chat box, or you can also ask for the mic access. If you raise your hand, I can give you a mic access, and I would be able to give you the mic access to make you have a discussion or a quick conversation with me. I can see Raj Shekhar has raised his hand. I'm giving you mic access, Raj Shekhar. Please unmute and you can talk to me.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Hi, Raj Shekhar. Good evening. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, OD falls in HRBP or HR Analytical, sir?
Pardon?
OD, Organization Development.
OD, so basically OD is a niche field which is largely being driven. I would connect it to even within HRBP. I think it gets more connected to the idea of talent development, because when you are driving concepts like change management, and when you are looking at driving concepts of creating leadership principles and driving those principles within the organization, and you're looking at taking a top-bottom approach, I think it needs that element so yes, I mean, I would not say that it's not part of HRBP, because HRBP, the way it is being structured in different companies in different parts of the world, there are differences. So yes, OD can also be driven through through specialist HRBPs who learn. You can also look at consultants and experts from the industry, freelancers who can come and drive this in your organization. Or it can also be driven through the talent development COE, the Center of Excellence, the talent development department, or the learning and development department, because it does connect a lot of analysis of behaviors, competencies, zeroing down on what needs to improve or what needs to change. And it needs investigation, it needs exploration, it needs elements of design thinking, and it needs clear outcome being defined, and post which through largely top bottom, which is leadership, and using principles of change management, you bring this, which finally would impact everything on HR related and operations related, in terms of how things are happening or how things are functioning. Right, Rajshekar?
Yes, sir.
Very good question.
Yes, sounds good. Thanks, sir.
Any more doubts? Anyone? Any questions? Raise your hand. I'll give you mic access. Otherwise, you can alternately type your questions in the Q&A or the chat. I would be able to help you with this. Anybody having any doubts, please ask. Anyone would like to ask anything, please feel free to ask. You just need to raise your hand, and I would be more than happy to help you with the with any information that you need. Anyone having any questions? I'm just sharing a screen again that would give you a few links, and it would also allow you to make use of this wonderful offer that is there. Give me a second, but in the meanwhile, please think of any questions that you can think of, and I would be more than happy to help you on that, right? So this is the dual certification offer. I showed you the academy already. So, this is what the offer would look like. You would have expert-led virtual sessions. You would have 1-year LMS access. You would have capstone projects. You would have CHRMP membership. You would have global certification, complimentary recertification, digital badge, alumni network, and all this is a webinar special pricing. And you can register by paying the first EMI actually, and the moment you make the payment, you would have your login ID created, your membership would start, and your course access for the HRBP would immediately be given. You can attend the orientation tomorrow. You can start the program anytime. I would request go ahead with the analytics program from 5th of December, and then you can take up HRBP, or you can take it if you are free and you feel that it is possible, you can do it together, or you can do it one after the other. But the point is that you are benefiting a lot here, because one entire certification is becoming absolutely, the entire fee is being waived off, right? I've shared the link. Any doubts, any questions anyone would like to ask, anything that you would like to know, just raise your hand. Anything about the topic today? You are not able to see my screen well. Okay, can you see it now? Is it okay now? Okay, great. Wonderful. Anyone wants to raise any, ask any questions, they can raise their hand and I can give them mic access. Anyone, any doubts, any questions? Okay, great. It was wonderful interacting with all of you. And I hope today's discussion on HRBP and HR Analytics shows you the changing face of human resource. And Rajshekhar, any time bound to finish the course? So yes, I mean, from the day of registration, within 1 year, you can finish both the certifications. But I have seen people taking 3 months to 6 months to complete both the certifications. It's a very good combination to have on your profile, Rajshekhar. HRBP and HR Analytics together is need of the industry today, right? So a lot of times we feel, why we are not getting opportunities with best of organizations. They're looking at something, and what I spoke about today in terms of things being driven, I think this is where the nichest work in human resource is happening and will be happening. Yeah, certainly. So take it up, and the sooner you finish, the better it is. But again, people have things to do. So 3 or to 6 months is what normally people take, but you have course access for next 1 year. So post registration, you can do this certification anytime within next 1 year. Yeah. Any doubts, any questions, anyone, anybody would like to ask? Okay, wonderful. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great week ahead. And I hope to see you guys again and also see you guys on board. Thank you.